And good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another live stream here on the Aviation Pro channel. As you can see, I'm in a little bit of a different room right now. I'm in my own room at my parents' home, and as you can see, it's a little bit brighter here and better lighting than in my own home where I study. So I hope this is a little bit better, and it just was more convenient now to do this live stream here, and that's why. I'm in a different room and there's some better lighting. So I took the microphone with me and everything. So please let me know if everything is working correctly. I would very much appreciate that. I'm going to share this event right now on Facebook. There we go. Because we're live now, episode number 3 of Aviation Pro Live. And I'd like to do more of these because a lot of people appreciate them. A lot of people come by to ask questions so I can answer them. And yeah, it's of course very useful and very nice to see everyone. Chat room should be open right now. Works. There we go. So there are already 2 people in here. Welcome everyone. And if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat room at aviationpro.nl/live. So very easy, aviationpro.nl/live. And I have disabled the comments section in the YouTube page because I want to, of course, get people to the website and use the chat room there, which is a little bit easier, and you don't even have to have an account. And you can set your name there as well without creating any account. So feel free to go there and post your questions so I can answer them for you in the next hour. Let me just see. All right, that works perfectly fine. I think the microphone level is good. Of course, when you're in a different room, you're in a little bit of a different setting and you need to try all those things out. But seems to work fine right now. So the event has been shared on Facebook. All right. It's on Twitter as well, I hope. Well, not sure if it's on Twitter now, but... Oh, wait. I got the wrong one. I've posted it on the wrong account, so that's not very convenient, of course. Let's see if I can delete this tweet. All right. Let me just log in on the other accounts, on the Aviation Pro accounts. And if you want to follow Aviation Pro on Twitter, it's at AviationProNL. So very either. So there we go. I'm just going to share this event very quickly on Twitter as well, so more people can join in. Okay, so what I want to talk about today is actually, first I want to talk a little bit about the Germanwings accident that happened last week. Of course, another terrible accident in the world of aviation. And of course, we've seen many tragic events recently. First, of course, we had the disappearing 777 by Malaysia Airlines, which still hasn't been found. And I mean, a lot of lives are probably lost there. And then of course we had the MH17, which was just probably the most horrible one of all, because it involved a lot of people from my own country, and of course the situation in which it happened was, yeah, terrible, and it is still terrible, and things are still going on, of course, and this is not an ending story. This kind of a never-ending story, and still research is going on, and things are still found on that site. And of course, then we had the Germanwings crash, which happened, I think it was last Tuesday, somewhere right there. Not exactly sure when, but I was very busy studying for my exams, and then suddenly you see the, I mean, on your phone or on the iPad, you see this message coming up of an airplane crash. And as an aviation enthusiast, I quit my work immediately, and I'm going to start looking at some of the data that has become available. And of course, this time it was there was a lot of data available from Flight Radar 24, and basically the whole world was able to look at how this airplane descended quite rapidly and where it ended up. And it's of course a very, very sad and tragic event. So when I looked at it, of course, first thing you do is you read the news, you try to find a call sign, and then, I mean, immediately saw some posts from Flight Radar 24 giving links to the playback of the aircraft. And of course, what struck me most was the fact that the airplane was descending quite rapidly. It was quite a normal rate of descent, but only if you would really descend with spoilers or speed brakes up, for example. Because I mean, in the 737, if you would make the same descent, the same amount of altitude, it would take me a lot more minutes than this guy did. But I think a descent rate like 3,000 to 4,000 feet per minute is quite doable with spoilers deployed, at least like in the flight attend mode. So that of course really struck me, and the fact that the airplane was flying a straight line, of course, and didn't know really if this was the actual route or if the airplane was put in some kind of heading mode. But I found later that it followed quite normally the route that it was supposed to fly from Barcelona to Düsseldorf. So of course it was a very weird sight that this airplane just descended this way without without making any turns. Because if something would happen, you expect the pilots to turn around and go back to Marseille, for example, or you would expect the airplane to make some kind of turn at least. But this didn't happen, and so that was quite strange. Not even a little tiny bit of a turn, just flying straight ahead and descending all the way until 6,800 feet. That's where the signal was lost on Flight Radar 24. So of course that already kind of got my attention, and I kind of expected that this could be intentional. How exactly, but I didn't know, of course. But then the news the next morning came in that they quite quickly recovered the cockpit voice recorder, the black box from the cockpit voice recorder, which was still readable. And they said in the news that they determined that the captain, or at least one of the pilots, was locked outside of the door. And of course, that gives a whole other dimension to the story, and this kind of shows that, and it's still the most plausible story, that this was an intentional act. And of course, that's a very sad thing. And more things are starting to appear now about this gentleman who took 149 lives with him in his act. That he had many suicide problems and was thinking about doing suicide, psychiatric problems. And of course, doctors cannot talk about that publicly. So this was kind of a personal story for him and probably his doctors. And of course, maybe they didn't even know that he was an airline pilot, for example. But of course, it's all kind of gossip story. You don't know the exact background of this person, and how the airline could have known that he had some personal problems. But all in all, it's a very tragic event, and it's a terrible way to have your life ended. And it's it's, of course, it shocks many aviation enthusiasts, and I bet it shocks a lot of pilots who do this job every day. You have to fly with a person next to them they don't know, or maybe they have seen a lot before, and you just don't expect things like this to happen. So they have changed a lot of the regulations by now, that for example, you have to have always two persons in the cockpit. So if one has to use the bathroom, and a steward or a stewardess comes in, at least to, for example, keep the cockpit door open. So there are at least always two persons in that cockpit. So if one does something strange and not if he does something that's not appropriate, then he or she can still take action. So yeah, this is of course a little bit of an method and new rule that kind of puts a strain on I think pilots and cabin crew, because of course that kind of reduces trust among your coworkers. I mean, it's yet another safety rule among the many safety rules that the aviation world still has. So, okay, I'm just gonna check out the chat room. Hello, everybody. Cloud Yo-Yo, hello. And Sarvish, welcome to the chat room. So if you have any questions, please post them in the chat room so I can answer them. You can post those questions already while I'll finish my thoughts on the Germanwings crash. So I was talking about the 2 persons in 1 cockpit rule, and that it reduces trust amongst the cabin crew, I think. And it's of course a very sad thing, but at least it increases the trust for the passengers. I mean, just the idea that one person can do this act, of course, made a lot of people fear for flying in the future, because I mean, I bet a lot of people who flew the next day just had a very odd feeling about it. And of course, by implementing this new cockpit rule, they eventually made sure that the passengers were more comfortable, of course. So it's not the best solution to this problem, I think. I mean, there's a lot more things going on in the background that actually should get a lot more attention. For example, psychological things that, I mean, you have a certain mental health apart from your physical health. And I think many airlines actually just, on the yearly checkups, they only look at the physical health. So if you're physically fit to fly, and of course that's a very good and important thing, but another aspect is the psychological thing and the mental health. So if the mental health is not all right, I mean, then people can do strange things as well, and we've seen that right now. And there have been some cases in the past, like Mozambique Airlines was quite recently as well. It didn't get much attention in the media, but it was an Embraer 170 or 190, I believe. And then some years ago, also Egypt Air in New York. So it happens very, very rarely, but still, I mean, I think there's a lot of, there are a lot of pilots who are quite in trouble, maybe with themselves, or, who have a hard time keeping a normal living. I mean, if you look at airlines with pay-to-fly schemes and just airlines with very strict schedules and with quite low pay rates, I mean, of course you are doing your dream job, but you cannot really maintain a good style of living. And of course, I think this discussion is gonna open up now, because and I know there are still a lot of airlines who have a pay-to-fly scheme. Just for you to get your hours, but then you're still, costs are rising and rising and rising. But actually, what you want to do is earn money to pay your enormous loan back, of course, because you will be spending a lot of money on flight training. So if you have to pay to fly your hours, I mean, that's going to add up even more. And it's not really possible to maintain a healthy and a normal lifestyle like the pilots now who are higher up the ladder have. So I think this will open up the discussion, and it's of course very unfortunate that an event like this has to happen in order to start this discussion. But nonetheless, it's very good, I think, to look at it and make sure that pilots are well paid in every circumstance, because they simply they have a huge responsibility over either a small or large number of passengers, and therefore I think you should not play around with pilots this way. And you should also check their mental health more frequently. But that's just my thoughts. Of course, I'm not a pilots in the real world yet, but of course, I've spoken to many people and heard many stories, and people who have finished flight training, but still can't find a job, or people who are in pay-to-fly schemes and cannot really maintain a normal lifestyle this way. So yeah, it's a very tragic event, the Germanwings crash, and yeah, we'll see what further investigation brings us, if it gives any new information. And I hope the discussion will, yeah, even though this accident had to happen, I hope that the discussion that will follow will improve the way pilots are being treated in the airlines, and the way airline pilots are checked by the airlines themselves, not only the physical health, but also the mental health. So those, yeah, that's my thought on the Germanwings crash, and I would like to conclude this little side note and just go on to answering the questions right now. And I've seen some coming in already. And there's some people out there. Hello, Dem Airbus and Latvian Aviation Guy. Welcome to the chat room at AviationPro Live. And we're just gonna start with the first question. What's going up? And then question that comes up very often is, when does the next VATSIM full flight video comes up? It's a question by Sarvesh. I'm not really sure when exactly, but I think I will have some time to make one very recently. So I might, in about 2 weeks, I might make a new VATSIM flight. I still have to decide what kind of flight that will be and where exactly, and what aircraft type. But of course, I want to make sure that's fun and that's very useful for new VATSIM pilots, because that's the main goal of my VATSIM videos. I don't just make a flight and show my face and then do my thing, but I also want to explain a lot in the background, and of course explain before what I'm doing for my flight preparation, and afterwards do a little bit of a review, so I can correct the mistakes that I make during my flights. And this is very useful for new pilots. So I have to plan that really in and make sure that no one disturbs me when I'm making those kind of videos. So, and of course I need to have time in general, but yeah, that's just the way it goes. So I hope very recently, but when it's there, of course, I will announce on Facebook and on Twitter when the next VATSIM video will come up. All right, there are more people coming in the chat room. Good evening, afternoon, or morning, wherever you are. Welcome to the AviationPro live session. You can join the chat room at aviationpro.nl/live, and you can set a name there and ask your questions so I can answer them for you in the next 40 minutes or so. All right, we'll go on with the next question. Dem Airbus asks, what kind of configuration do I have? Well, it's very simple. You can, if you are on my website, you can go to the top and go to the flight simulator section, and then go to my system, and that gives you my specs and what my computer looks like. It's not my entire configuration with SciTech yokes and stuff, but it's just the main specs of my computer system. So go to the top, flight simulator, and to my system. There you will find my specs. And then Cloudy Yo-Yo asks, was there not a bypass system for the door on the Airbus? Well, there was a very good video on YouTube, and there is a very good video on YouTube which explains the door and how the door can be opened from the outside if the pilots are incapacitated in the front. But the basic thing is that whenever you want to open the door from the outside and nobody inside responds, if you type in a code, then a 30-second timer starts. But in that time, a person inside can still put the lock switch to the lock position. So he or she can deny access even though you type in a code. So, of course, that's what I've learned from that video. But I don't think there's really a code that overrides everything. And so you can just open the door. That doesn't work that way. So It's either wait 30 seconds for the door to open, or the pilot opens the door when code or is entered, for example. But the pilot can also decide to lock the door in those 30 seconds when the timer starts. So, and that's what's probably happened in this case with the Germanwings crash, which of course is a very sad thing, and that's why they've quickly implemented the 2 persons in cockpit rule, which was already implemented with major airlines in the US, but in Europe it's not very common, but very, I mean, Lufthansa, Air Berlin, even KLM, I mean, they immediately implemented this new rule, so at least solves a little bit of the problem. Let's take a look. Yeah, so there's a manual lock indeed. So let's take a look what is next. So Anonymous 7666, do you really think that this event will prompt the airlines to pay the pilots more? I'm not sure if it's necessarily more, but maybe it's more equally distributed, especially for pilots who are in the need for getting their flight hours. So, I mean, those pay-to-fly schemes are ridiculous if you think about it. I mean, it puts such a strain on your life if you have to pay even more, apart from that already very expensive flight training. You know, only if you have very rich parents which can pay everything for you, but that's usually not the case, of course. So it's not necessarily more, but at least something, and at least get rid of those pay-to-fly schemes. I mean, that's just ridiculous in my opinion. So I don't know how common it is exactly. I think it's more common in Asia than in Europe, for example, but still, those schemes are out there, and yeah, people have to make use of it because they want to have their flight hours. But, you know, I mean, when you're starting with your life like that, I mean, it's not very convenient, and it's, I mean, then you have to spend even more years to paying back all that money. And so, yeah, we'll see what happens after this discussion. That's probably going to come up, and it's already going on actually. But of course, the pay-to-fly schemes have been under the discussion for a very long time already. So, all right, let's go to the next comments. Sarvesh says that there are a lot of job openings in the USA. Yeah, that's true. Actually, in the USA, it's quite good at the moment for the airline industry, and they, I think they recruit a lot of new, or they hire a lot of new pilots there as well. So that's of course a very good sign, and that shows the improvement of the economy and yeah, the situation in the airline industry, which has been very difficult, of course, and it's still quite difficult. I mean, it's not very normal, and that's why I'm studying something else first as well before I go into any kind of flight training. All right, could the next VATSIM video be from Riga? Yeah, I know I've seen that airports being requested many times. It really depends because I have to plan on a fixed date when I'm gonna make a flight, and yeah, that basically means it really depends on the ATC availability. So really what air traffic controllers have to do on a VATSIM network is just book their position, so I know I can pay them a visit, and I don't announce my visit when I'm making those kind of videos. So it's always a surprise for them, and after a few weeks, you know, there's always a controller who comments on one of my videos saying, "Hey, I was that controller." Yeah, so that's of course very cool. But so I can't really tell what the next airport will be. It really depends on the bookings and of course on the distance, because I usually don't make a lot of long flights, but I might fly from Amsterdam this time, because it's been quite a while ago that I've flown from Amsterdam. Of course, the very first VATSIM video from Amsterdam to Vienna was from Amsterdam, but after that it was, of course, was Bratislava to Prague, and then it was London Heathrow to Amsterdam, Zurich to Copenhagen, then Minsk to Helsinki. So I think it might be a good time to fly from Amsterdam, and usually there's quite a lot of air traffic control on Amsterdam on Friday nights, so I might do that flight on a Friday night and then see what kind of other ATC there is in the neighborhood. So but I can't give any promises. But as always, on Facebook, I will always announce where the next VATSIM full flight will be and what the progress is of making the video. So let's take a look. Do you want to be a pilot? Yassine asks. Oh, yes. That's why I'm doing all this, I guess. Yeah, it's of course a hobby right now. And who knows, it might become my profession in the future. I mean, I really don't know. But at least some kind of pilot license would always be nice, of course. But it really depends on, yeah, the situation in the airline industry and my personal situation. You know, I might say that, you know, after studying, I don't want to become a real pilot anymore, but just a private pilot, for example. I mean, that's fine as well, but it really depends. But at least some kind of flying license would, of course, be very cool, because flying in the real world is very different from flying your simulator all the time. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, let's take a look. I'm just gonna have to look up that ICAO code. I recognize it. Marco asks, do a flight from Amsterdam to Venice. Yeah, of course, Venice. Yeah, maybe. So I can't give any promises on that, of course. Then we have another question coming in from Bake and Streak 034. What do you think of the two Ryanairs who clipped? Well, I've seen that news message, but I didn't really look at the cause of the accident. But it has happened before with Ryanair airplanes, hasn't it? It's kind of weird, but yeah, I really don't know whose fault it is in this case, whether it was the ground controller or the pilots themselves. But it's of course a very unfortunate accident. I mean, you expect to go and fly, but instead, you know, your wingtip gets clipped off, and then you have to go back to the gate, and your flight is canceled. So that's kind of annoying for the passengers, of course. So it's not very smart. I'm not sure why it is Ryanair all the time, but of course we need to look at the causes of that accident. All right, Cloudy Yo-Yo says, your tutorials have helped me a lot since joining VATSIM. Well, I'm glad to hear that. That's why I'm doing them, of course, and I plan to make more tutorials as well for VATSIM in the upcoming months, because I'm also working on a new version of the website in the background, which is going to be a lot more extensive than the current website, because the current website was kind of a startup. It was for me to, you know, experiencing running a website for the very first time and creating and designing a website, which is actually quite a fun job to do. But it's all about adding content, of course, and that takes a little while. So it's all in my free time, and but in the background I'm working on them, and you can expect to see some videos with that as well, I hope. I don't know how many, but I'm sure they will be helpful, because I really want the website to be in a place where people just can go to get some basic flight training, either for just Flight Simulator or VATSIM, and of course also for new VATSIM pilots to really get starting flying on the VATSIM network properly. Because of course you can follow the P1 pilot rating, but those are still the very, very basics. And I think it's really important that pilots really know what they're doing when they are starting to join VATSIM, because otherwise they cause trouble, and air traffic controllers don't like that, and the whole network doesn't like that. So I'm really trying to improve things that way as much as I can. And of course, I like doing those videos. So yeah, that's a little bit of a background story. All right, Marco, if the guy inside the cockpit responds within 5 seconds, it locks again. Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean, but yeah, all right. Okay. There's also a 5-second timer. I'm not sure exactly where it is at, but there was something about the 5-second timer again. For when the pilot opens the door, the cabin crew has 5 seconds to come in, otherwise it will lock again. That's the way it works. But there's a very useful video on YouTube about the A320 cockpit door, so you can watch that if you like. Does Boeing have something like this either? I really don't know about Boeing. I mean, I know there's some kind of cockpit door switch, but of course, as a flight simulator pilot, I never use them. It's probably a part of the checklist as well, but I'm not sure how it works exactly on the Boeings. But I mean, the fact is that the doors are the same. I mean, they all have this high security system involved, and but how they exactly operate it, how the Boeing doors can be opened from the outside, I really don't know exactly. You should ask a Boeing pilot, or maybe there's a video about that as well on YouTube. All right, are you a member of a virtual airline? Nope, I'm not a member of a virtual airline at the moment. I just don't have time for that. I like to make my own flights in my free time, and don't really want to be affiliated with a virtual airline. All right. So what I'm studying right now, I'm studying liberal arts and sciences here in the Netherlands. All right, and JAVB, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. He is making a flight from Krakow on VATSIM. Yeah, and he says, I believe you like to fly. Yeah, of course I like to fly. I mean, that's just a dream come true. And even though it's just on VATSIM, it's of course very nice to, experiencing flying in that way. I mean, like 15 years ago, VATSIM didn't even exist, or the SATCO, it was called in the very beginning. I mean, you really wonder how pilots in the past have done that. I mean, all they could do is probably read magazines and about airplanes, but they didn't actually get to fly simulators. I mean, we now know how to operate a Boeing 737. At least we know how to operate its system. So that's of course very weird, and but it's fun, and I'm glad that flight simulator, the concept of flight simulator, is around, and also the VATSIM network, because it's so realistic and very useful to get an idea of flying in the skies, and with air traffic controllers and all communication things, etc. So all right, another question from Latvian aviation guy. When there will be spotting videos, I don't know. I really don't have plans yet to go spotting, probably in the summer at Amsterdam again, but I'm not exactly sure why, of when, or when, I mean, because it really depends on my own schedule. But of course, summer is the best time to go spotting. I mean, I've been the first day at Amsterdam video I made, I've created that one in March. And it was quite very cold at that time. It was like 7 degrees centigrade, and it was quite a lot of wind. So that was not very useful, but it was great to go spotting on that day. I mean, the airplanes kind of kept you warm, of course, just looking at the airplanes and hearing them come by and things like that. So that's, of course, very cool. But in general, spotting in summer is best. I've been in there in September, June or July, months like that. Those are generally very good months, and the weather is usually pretty good as well. Even though it rains a lot in the Netherlands, but so far I didn't really have any rain on my trips to Amsterdam, so that's of course very good. I like to keep it that way. Yeah, so I will see when I go spotting again. But I really want to first make some good videos about VATSIM and about aviation in general for the website. All right, so that kind of has the priority. All right, there's a good amount of questions coming in, and there are still people in the chat room. Welcome everybody who just joined in here at aviationpro.nl/live. So what I've done so far is talked about the Germanwings accident, kind of my thoughts, and kind of discussed it already. And now there's still some 20 minutes left to post your questions, so I can answer them for you. Just gonna take a sip of water, because I'm not used to talking that much like this. But let's take a look. We can go over to the next question. All right. So there's a question from Anonymous8935. Hello, I'm building a home cockpit for AviationPro, but I don't know how to use the switches for PC. Can you help me? I have you don't know how to. I'm not exactly sure what you mean, but how to use the switches for a PC. If you're really building a home cockpit, you should not visit me, because I have a very basic setup with the Cytec yoke and the throttle quadrant and the rudder pedals, but I really haven't built any kind of home cockpit like you really see those people do, with full overhead panels and full throttle quadrants, things like that. So I really don't know how that works exactly, but so I'm afraid I cannot really help you with that. Okay, Marco, you're right. So the override code punched in the cockpit guy gets a beep and needs to respond within 5 seconds, and the door will not unlock. So very flawed, because all power is in the cockpit. That's true. That's true. So maybe they can change things in the future about the cockpit door system and how it's all opened. All right, Anonymous 6960, great stream. Thank you very much, and you're welcome. What do you think about the Q400? That's of course the Dash 8. And all those Cessna airplanes. Cessna 182, Cessna 172, 152 of A2A. Well, I don't have those aircraft of A2A, but I have them from Coronado, which are very good planes as well. I like to fly them because, with the Cessnas, you can actually see the ground very well, which is especially very helpful in Flight Simulator, because if you really have a lower deck wings, like the Piper Archer or things like that, it's very hard to see the ground, and especially when you look around in Flight Simulator, it's kind of hard to see the ground properly, especially with those undercarriage wings. So I like the Cessnas, and the Q400 is yeah, from what I've seen, it's a very nice plane by Majestic Simulations. Yeah, I mean, it's a very nice regional prop plane, of course, and a lot of airlines fly it, and I might want to try that one out once I switch to Prepar 2D, whenever that may be, because I really don't know. But I like flying those kind of small airplanes, like the Embraer 135 and 145. So I might give it a try, and I have seen that the airplane and this add-on is very professional as well, so that's of course very good. All right, Anonymous 6607, welcome. And do you like to fly the Boeing 777? Yeah, I think I would like to, but I've never tried it. But because I don't have FSX, so I don't have the Boeing 777 of PMDG. But from what I've seen, it's a very nice aircraft to fly. I've never flown it in real life either. I have flown on the 767-400, which is kind of the same. Even the cockpits look very similar, because yeah, you would expect the 767 cockpit to look like a 767-300 cockpit, but in the 400 version, it looks a lot more like the 777 actually. But yeah, it must be a very cool airplane to fly, and that's yet another one of those planes that's not going to be available for FS9. So that I might want to try out once I have Prepar 3D, but it really depends. I'll see what I'll do. What's your favorite aircraft type? I think it's the Boeing 737. I mean, that's kind of the mainstream airliner. I really like to fly that airplane in Flight Simulator as well, and I just like the looks of it. And of course, with KLM colors, for example, it looks just beautiful. And like the fact that the Boeing 737 is modern, yet it has very classical elements. I mean, the whole overhead panel of a 737 NG is still very similar to the overhead panel on the 200 and 300 versions. So that's what I really like about the Boeing 737. It's kind of classical, but it still has all the modern systems involved, at least on the most modern 737s. And the new airplane, the 737 MAX, is of course looks a lot more like the 787 cockpit, which it doesn't look bad either, but it's it doesn't really have those classical elements anymore. It looks a lot more stylish and very modern, as you would expect a modern airliner to be actually. But yeah, I kind of like the classical stuff as well. So 737 it is for me. All right, Anonymous 6960, he's going to do a flight from Hong Kong from Heathrow. Wow, that's a very long flight. Good luck with that. I don't think I would do that myself. Such a long flight. All right, Anonymous 8935. What is that sound? All right. Okay. There are quite a lot of questions here. I'll try to answer them as quick as possible. There are a lot more questions than the previous live stream, so I have to get used to that. All right. Should I build a cockpit myself or just buy the SATEC set? Well, building a home cockpit yourself is expensive, so if you don't want to spend the money on that, you should definitely just go for the SciTech things, which is fine as well. And the SciTech, yeah, of course you can use it for multiple planes as well. That's true. Because if you really start to build a true cockpit, you can only use it for the 737, for example, which isn't bad in general, but that means you really can only fly one type of airplane. However, with the SciTech yokes and all that stuff, you can just fly any airplane you want. I mean, it kind of feels like a Cessna yoke, but it's still very doable and I think quite realistic for a 737 yoke. Justin asks, I need help with VATSIM descent. I'm not sure what you mean. You need help with descending in general. Well, I can really recommend to follow the P1 pilot's rating for that. There's a lot more information out there. You can go to academy.vatsim.net. And on this website, you can follow the P1 pilot rating and learn more about flying the airplane in general and also the communications during the descent. All right, let's take a look. So you get confused all the time when I descend with the 737 when air traffic control tells me to descend to flight level blah blah blah. To what point do I have to get to that altitude in my route? Well, it really, the thing I do, I just pre-program the entire arrival route in my FMC and then just use VNAV to follow all the restrictions. Because in most cases, when air traffic controls tells you to descend to a certain flight level, you're still going to have to comply with the restrictions along your route, and they usually will tell you that. For example, if you arrive in Amsterdam from the east, you're going to have to cross the waypoint RTIP at flight level 100 or below. That's stated on the charts. And usually air traffic control will tell you, for example, descend to flight level 70, cross RTIP at flight level 100 or below. So in the beginning phase of the descent, I just use VNAV, use the pre-programmed flight path and descent rate to get down to the airport. And a little bit later on, when you really start to get vectors and when you're really deviating from your route, I start to use flight level change. So there's no fixed point you have to be at that altitude on your route unless air traffic controls tells you. For example, you might tell you descend flight level 100 to be leveled at RTIP. That means you have to be at that waypoint at that flight level. But in general, if air traffic controls clears you to a lower altitude, just use VNAV in the first place. And when you really start to get vectored, you can use flight level change. Okay, homemade cockpits, $50. SciTech, $2,500. Well, that's not really true. It's kind of the opposite. SciTech is not very expensive, actually. But once you really start to make your own cockpits, with all the switches and real life gauges, that's a lot of money you're going to be spending. All right, so there's some discussion going on about building a cockpit. You can do it with wood, paper, whatever you want, of course. Okay, I have the explain flight factor Boeing 757-100. It's amazing. All right, so I don't have explain, but I'm sure there are quite good add-ons for explain as well. I've also been following the development of the this new 737 Classic for explain a little bit, and it looks quite good. But I'm not really at home with explain and explain add-ons, so unfortunately I can't really talk about that. All right, Anonymous 6960, am I on the Dutch fact team speak? Well, I rarely am available up there, but yeah, it's been a long time since I visited there. Because usually when I join TeamSpeak on my flying, it's only when I really talk with someone privately or when I joined the Dutch VAC TeamSpeak, it's only for controlling, but I haven't been controlling for a very long time. So yeah, I'm not really into joining TeamSpeak during my flights because my flights are very short in general. So, and when I just fly, I need to spend time on getting the flight done properly, of course. So, all right, VPA561, thanks for some of the best tutorial videos seen on YouTube. Well, you're very welcome. I'm glad to hear that, of course. Would like to see another flight with the iFly 747, perhaps on VATSIM. Yeah, well, I really need to get used to flying the iFly 747. I took it out for one flight on the one of the Friday night fly-ins organized by the Dutch VAC, and I flew from Amsterdam to what was it? Oh, Malmö, which was a cargo flight. Unfortunately, a cargo version is not available yet, but I just took it to passenger version, which doesn't matter that much. But so I kind of got my hands on flying the 747. But if you know to fly one Boeing, you pretty much know the basics of flying the other Boeings. But still, I mean, the 747 is an aircraft with 4 engines, and there's the fuel system is much more advanced than the 737. You have a lot more fuel tanks and pumps that you can use, and there are, in certain phases of flight, this fuel tank should be turned off and things like that. So I really need to read in the manuals for that to fly the 747 properly before I take it out on a VATSIM flight, because of course I don't want to be ashamed of myself making a lot of mistakes when flying the 747. And but I might take it out for a short route. I hope iFly will release a service pack soon with maybe a new model of the freighter version of the airplane. I mean, I think a lot of people are looking forward to that, because now only the passenger version is available, which of course is a bit silly, but I know they're working on a freighter version as well. And even they might have even plans to do the 747-8, which of course is a very new airplane. And I mean, some airlines are already flying with them. I think Lufthansa is flying with it for the passenger version, and the cargo version, like Cargolux, is flying with that as well. So I think it's a pretty nice airplane to fly. So yeah, we'll see what iFly will do with the 747. Of course, we also will see what PMDG will do with their 747 version 2, which might be released pretty soon. I'm not exactly sure about that development, but I know they are working on that. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Vortex Falcon, good evening. How old are you? I am 20 years old, so that's still young enough to become a pilot, of course. Why level change? Why not say vertical speed? Justin asks. So Justin had some questions regarding descending while on VATSIM, and when you are doing a VATSIM flight. So I said, yeah, at some point you're gonna have to switch to level change because it's more convenient. And why not vertical speed? Well, you can use vertical speed. It really depends on the situation, and there's no one fixed mode of descent that always has to be used. It really is in the hands of the pilot to decide which vertical descent mode should be used. You can either use level change or vertical speeds when you're being vectored. If you want to have level change, it's more convenient when you have to stay at a fixed speed. For example, air traffic control has told you that you have to fly 220 knots, and at that point you're going to have to stay at 220 knots until the air traffic control gives you a lower speed. So in that case, level change is a very convenient mode, because in 737 at least, it's level change. Make sure that you're at a fixed speed, and then it just reduces the thrust, and then gives you a certain descent rate that will give you an airspeed of 220 knots. Vertical speeds might be more useful if you think you're too far away from the airport to go in level change already. So you just want to descend a little bit less fast, and then get a little bit more of thrust in to descend at a lower rate of descent, but still flying at 220 knots. So it really depends. You should use your own intuition. If you know that you're very far away from the airport, and that if you're going to use level change, that you're going to be flying at 2,000 feet for 10 minutes, of course, that's not very convenient. So and if air traffic control sees that you're too high still, they will say something like KLM 123 expedite your descent, and then you know, okay, I kind of misjudged this descent, and now I have to switch to level change, maybe also use my spoilers to get down a little bit sooner. So it really depends, but usually for me it's VNAV, and then when I get vectored, I usually use level change, which usually works out fine in the 737, but of course it depends on the aircraft type as well, because every aircraft type behaviors or behaves differently. For example, the Embraer 135, I tend to use more vertical speed mode there compared to the 737. So it's in your own hands, and you should just experiment with that a little bit, I think. All right, Anonymous 8703. Well, you can follow VNAV before the planned stop of descent. Yeah, in 737 you can activate descent via the FMC as in the Q400. That's correct. So if air traffic control tells you to descend before you have reached your top of descent, so the point at which you programmed the FMC to descend, you can also tell the FMC, I want to start my descent now. From the top of my head, it's just a VNAV descent page, and then there's a little button which says descend now. And then you can descend your airplane a little bit sooner. So there are a lot of options available. You don't have to use level change for that. You can still stay in VNAV mode and just let the airplane descend earlier. All right. Right. All right, Vortex Falcon. Yeah, that's more enough to become a pilot. That's true. Do you know if PMDG is updating the MD-11 for Prep RTD? I really don't know. Unfortunately, I don't have any experience with the MD-11 of... Oops, sorry, the microphone shifted. Unfortunately, I don't really have experience with the MD-11 of the PMDG, but so I don't know if they're going to be converting that to Prep R3D, but I don't know how hard that is, actually. I mean, they have the MD-11 for FSX, so you might say that switching over to Prep RTD for such an airplane add-on should not be that hard, but I guess it's all marketing, of course. I mean, if the costs are too high, then they won't do it, which is, of course, a sad thing, because a lot of people still like to fly it, I think. I mean, it's an airplane which is kind of fading away, unfortunately. I mean, KLM has dropped the MD-11 very recently, which of course is a very sad event. But yeah, we'll see what happens to that. But I don't know. Personally, best thing to do is just visit PMDG and ask them over there, maybe on their forums, if they know that they're gonna transfer their MD-11 to Prep R3D as well. But I see a lot of developers doing that, actually. And of course, whenever new airplanes and sceneries are created, like the iFly 747, they're also being developed for Prep R3D immediately. So that's, of course, very nice. Okay. So Anonymous 8703 says level change keeps the speeds which is entered in the MCP. That's correct. An aircraft will maintain speed with pitch. Yeah, so that's what I told you. If you just enter speeds and use level change, the aircraft is going to reduce the thrust and just use the pitch to come up with a rate of descent that will keep you at 220 knots in my example. Anonymous 8703 says again that it's like the IS mode in other aircraft, indicated airspeed modes. That's correct. I think the Embraer also has that. Embraer has flight level change. It doesn't work the same way. It has a speed mode that kind of works like a flight level change, and also a descent, some kind of profile descent. But the Embraer 135, 145 doesn't really have VNAV function. So that's what makes that aircraft a little bit more fun to fly, because you really have to hand fly that airplane a little bit more and use your own intuition on how fast to descend. So, all right. Okay, I got a few more minutes. I'm going to close down soon. So thanks for all the questions that were coming in. That's perfect. And I'm glad that you all joined. So Justin, thanks for the tips. You're welcome. And of course, all the other people that contributed in the chat room. Any thoughts on the Qualitywings 787? Yeah, of course, that's also a very nice development. And their 737 Classic. I mean, those are also airplanes that are going to be released for FSX and Prepar 3D only, unfortunately, in my case. So, you know, these kind of releases of these kind of add-ons kind of pushes me to switch to a new simulator, which I might do pretty recently. It really depends. But for now, I like flying FS 2004 with the iFly 737 and the Embraer very much. And there's still some good sceneries around, and I have a lot of frame rates with that as well. But I might want to try Prepar 2D, and then, of course, might want to try out many new add-ons that are available, like the 787. I mean, I think it's great that they've been developing this airplane quite instantly when it was actually flown by the first airliner. And they've been working on it for quite a while right now. And the pictures look very good, very promising. The only thing about Qualitywings, from what I know, I don't have any of their products, but from what I know, the systems on the airplanes are not as advanced as the actual systems. So I really want to know if the FMC really has all the functions that the actual airplane has. Otherwise, it might be a reason for me not to buy it, because I mean, when I buy an add-on, a professional add-on, I expect the airplane to be as good as possible. So it really depends on how advanced their flight management system is and things like that. But we'll see what happens. And then their 737 Classic, which is of course a very, very nice airplane to fly. I mean, there hasn't been a very good Classic around. There was the Wilco 737 Classic, but it was not very good, I think. I mean, if you look at that cockpit, I've made one video with that, but yeah, it was not very good airplane. It's very old, and so it's kind of time that the new 737 Classic is being developed, and I really like the looks of it so far. So some nice development taking place in the add-on world and with airplanes. So all right, there are some more final comments coming in. Okay, Sarfest says you should plan a group fly. Yeah, I might do that. I've talked about that in a previous live stream to maybe do some kind of group flight, or maybe a group meetup in the Netherlands, for example. That's of course very nice to do. I'll see what I'll do for that. Anonymous 8703. I left FS 2004 because there was no Q400. Oh, that's of course a very good reason then. If you really like to fly the Q400, and yeah, it's simply not available for FS 2004, but it is available for FSX and Prepar 2D. I'm not really sure, but yeah, if those add-ons really become available and it's for FSX only, yeah, then it's might be a moment to switch. I mean, there's also some sceneries in development right now, like a new scenery for Amsterdam by Flight Tampa, which is of course a very nice development, an airplane or an airport that I fly regularly to. So, you know, I right now have the normal airsoft scenery, but you know, things are getting very outdated very quickly. So yeah, it's new sceneries, new airplanes. Most of them are for FSX and Prepar 2D nowadays, except for iFly. They've actually also created their airplane for FS9, which is very nice, of course. All right, so I got 2 more minutes left. I'll answer one more question. I have a problem with the iFly 737 recently. When I try to increase altitude with my mouse, it doesn't go up. Instead, it goes to 0 altitude, but I can increase the indicated airspeed. For instance, any idea? I don't know. You must be misselecting someone or something, some kind of button, because what I've done, I've programmed my keyboard to control the mode control panel, which is much more convenient actually, so you don't have to mess around with the mouse in the virtual cockpit. But that's just an idea that might solve your problem. But otherwise, I really want to point you to the iFly 737 forums, because they have great support over there, and very friendly people, and they always help you out quite instantly. Okay. All right. Yeah. Amsterdam from Flight Tampa finally updates runways when you go online. Yeah, that's of course very cool. So a lot of new features, I hope, And there's also a new taxiway actually being built, or maybe it's already ready at Amsterdam. So, you know, those are all kind of little things that are quite important, but they're not available in the sceneries that we have now. So I kind of expect a lot from Flight Tampa on that, but we'll see. So the hour is now over. I would like to thank you all for joining the live stream yet again. Episode number 003. So we've talked about the Germanwings crash and I've answered a lot of questions from you guys, and there were a lot of questions this time. So yeah, it's quite good. And there are still 10 people in the chat room right now. But I'm gonna quit the live stream now. Thanks for joining in. Please check out my Facebook. It's facebook.com/fs2004 AviationPro to stay up to date with the channel. If you would like to stay up to date via Twitter, you can go to twitter.com/aviationpronl. And of course, you can go to my website, aviationpro.nl, which is the main platform, and which is being I'm getting a little bit more development in the website in the background. So thanks for joining in here on the live stream, and of course have a happy Easter this weekend. Enjoy the little holiday that's ahead if you're celebrating it, and I'd like to see you next time on a new video. Bye bye.